Hey, good morning, guys. Oh, I gotta find the camera. It's over here. So my computer crashed dramatically. I actually had recorded part one of chapter 4 already last night, and then I went to turn on my computer, and it basically broke itself. So that's an exciting thing. Um, so before I start with chapter 4, and hopefully this video isn't as awful as I feel like it might be. Um, like I hope I got the right side of the cameras. Um, this week was really rough for me. The beginning of the week into the week, the weekend into the beginning of the week, I was in a lot of pain. I went to a doctor's appointment. That was an exciting thing. Just, that was fun. Um, literally my favorite part of going to the hospital there is that there's a Starbucks and it's currently gingerbread latte season, and that makes my disappointments better. Though my doctor is really trying. She's trying to eliminate any psychological causes that it might be, before we start, I think, moving on to other possibilities. But yeah, with my grandmother's death last week, it gets kind of hard sometimes. But don't worry about me. I'm dealing with grief really well. I think this is going to sound a little warped, but I think the fact that I've lived so long without being able to see my relatives whenever I want physically has aided in helping me manage my grief. I mean, it's also a double-edged sword because there's like a lot of times I'm like, I wish I could have spent more time. I wish I did more. I wish I wasn't such a slacker with my letters and stuff like that. But, you live and you learn. So the next ghost we're going to be dealing with is the ghost of Christmas Present, and he is creepy. And this whole chapter is just a little bit depressing. So we're just going to jump right in right now. We're going to read about halfway through, which is about 10 pages. It's a 20-page chapter, so let's get to it. Chapter 4, The Last of the Spirits. The phantom slowly, gravely, silently approached. When it came near him, Scrooge bent down upon his knees, for in the very air through which this spirit moved, it seemed to scatter gloom and mystery. Not very fun. It was shrouded in a deep black garment, which concealed its head, its face, its form, and left nothing of it visible save one outstretched hand. But for this it would have been difficult to detach its figure from the night, and separate it from the darkness by which it was surrounded. He felt that it was tall and stately when it came beside him, and that its mysterious presence filled him with a solemn dread. He knew no more, for the spirit neither spoke nor moved. "Am I in the presence of the ghost of Christmas yet to come?" said Scrooge. The spirit answered not, but pointed onward with its hand. "Excuse me. You are about to show me shadows of the things that have not yet happened, but will happen in the time before us," Scrooge pursued. "Is that so, spirit?" The upper portion of the garment was contracted for an instant in its folds, as if the spirit had inclined its head. That was the only answer he received. Although well used to the ghostly company by this time, Scrooge feared the silent shape so much that his legs trembled beneath him, and he found that he could hardly stand when he prepared to follow it. The spirit paused a moment, as observing his condition and giving him time to recover. But Scrooge was all the worse for this. It thrilled him with a vague, uncertain horror to know that behind the dusky shroud there were ghostly eyes intently fixed upon him, while he, though he stretched his own to the utmost, could see nothing but a spectral hand and one great heap of black. "Ghost of the future," he exclaimed, "I fear you more than any spectre I have seen, but as I know your purpose is to do me good, and as I hope to live to be another man from what I was, I am prepared to bear your company, and do it with a thankful heart. Will you not speak to me?" It gave him no reply. The hand was pointed straight before them. "Lead on," said Scrooge, "lead on. The night is waning fast, and it is precious time to me, I know. Lead on, spirit." The phantom moved away as it had come towards him. Scrooge followed in the shadow of its dress, which bore him up, he thought, and carried him along. They scarcely seemed to enter the city, for the city rather seemed to spring up about them and encompass them of its own act. But there they were, in the heart of it, on 'change, amongst the merchants, who hurried up and down and chinked their money in their pockets and conversed in groups and looked at their watches and trifled thoughtfully with their great gold seals, and so forth, as Scrooge had seen them often. The spirit stopped beside one little knot of businessmen. Observing that the hand was pointed to them, Scrooge advanced to listen to their talk. "No," said a great fat man with a monstrous chin. "I don't know much about it either way. I only know he's dead." "When did he die?" inquired another. "Last night, I believe." "Why, what was the matter with him?" asked a third. It's going to sound Western now. Taking a vast quantity of snuff out of a very large snuff box. "I thought he'd never die." "God knows," said the first, with a yawn. "What has he done with his money?" asked a red-faced gentleman with a pendulous excrescence, I don't get any better at saying that word, on the end of his nose, that shook like gills of a turkey cock. "I haven't heard," said the man with the large chin, yawning. "Left it to his company, perhaps. He hasn't left it to me, that's all I know." This pleasantry was received with a general laugh. It's likely to be a very cheap funeral," said the same speaker, "for upon my life I don't know of anybody to go to it. Suppose we make up a party and volunteer." "I don't mind going if lunch is provided," observed the gentleman with the excrescence on his nose. "But I must be fed, if I make one." Another laugh. "Well, I am the most disinterested among you, after all," said the first speaker, "for I never wear black gloves, and I never eat lunch. But I'll offer to go, if anybody else will. When I come to think of it, I'm not at all sure that I wasn't his most particular friend, for we used to stop and speak whenever we met. Bye-bye." Speakers and listeners strolled away and mixed with other groups. Scrooge knew the men and looked towards the spirit for an explanation. The phantom glided on into a street, its finger pointed to two persons meeting. Scrooge listened again, thinking that the explanation might lie here. He knew these men also perfectly. They were men of business, very wealthy, and of great importance. He had made a point always of standing well in their esteem. In a business point of view, that is. Strictly in a business point of view. "How are you?" said one. "How are you?" returned the other. "Well," said the first, "Old Scratch has got his own last, hey?" "So I'm told," returned the second. "Cold, isn't it?" "Seasonable for Christmas time. You're not a skater, I suppose?" No, something else to think of. Good morning." Not another word. That was their meeting, their conversation, and their parting. Scrooge was at first inclined to be surprised that the spirit should attach importance to the conversation apparently so trivial. But feeling assured that they must have some hidden purpose, he set himself to consider what it was likely to be. They could scarcely be supposed to have any bearing on the death of Jacob, his old partner, for that was past, and this ghost province was the future. Nor could he think of anyone immediately connected with himself to whom he could apply them. But nothing doubting that to whomsoever they applied, they had some latent moral for his own improvement. He resolved to treasure up every word he heard, and everything he saw, and especially to observe the shadow of himself when it appeared. For he had an expectation that the conduct of his future self would give him the clue he missed, and would render the solution of these riddles easy. He looked about in that very place for his own image, but another man stood in his accustomed corner, and though the clock pointed to his usual time of day for being there, he saw no likeness of himself among the multitudes that poured in through the porch. It gave him little surprise, however, for he had been revolving in his mind a change of life, and thought and hoped that he saw his new-born resolutions carried out in this. Quiet and dark beside him stood the phantom, with its outstretched hand. When he roused himself from his thoughtful quest, he fancied from the turn of the hand and its situation in reference to himself, that the unseen eyes were looking at him keenly. It made him shudder and feel very cold. They left the busy scene and went into an obscure part of town where Scrooge had never penetrated before, although he recognized the situation and its bad repute. The ways were foul and narrow, the shops and houses wretched, the people half naked, drunken, slipshod, ugly. Alleys and archways, like so many cesspools, disgorged their offences of smell and dirt and life upon the straggling streets. And the whole quarter reeked with crime, with filth and misery. Far in this den of infamous resort, there was a low-browed beetling shop below a penthouse roof, where iron, old rags, bottles, bones, and greasy offal were bought. Upon the floor within were piled up heaps of rusty keys, nails, chains, hinges, files, scales, weights, and refuse iron of all kinds. Excuse me, I need a drink. Secrets that few would like to scrutinize were bred and hidden in mountains of unseemly rags, masses of corrupted fat, and bones. Sitting in among the wares he dealt in, by a charcoal stove made of old brick, was a gray-haired rascal, nearly 70 years of age, who had screened himself from the cold air without by a frowsy curtaining of miscellaneous tatters, hung upon a line, and smoked his pipe in all the luxury of calm retirement. Scrooge and the Phantom came into the presence of this man, just as a woman with a heavy bundle slunk into the shop. But she had scarcely entered when another woman, similarly laden, came in too, and she was closely followed by a man in faded black, who was no less startled by the sight of them than they had been upon the recognition of each other. After a short period of blank astonishment, in which the old man with the pipe had joined them, they all three burst into a laugh. "Let the charwoman alone to be first," cried she who had entered first. "Let the laundress alone be the second, and let the undertaker's man alone be the third. Look here, old Jerry, here's a chance, if we haven't all three met here without meaning it." "You couldn't have met in a better place," said old Joe, removing his pipe from his mouth. "Come into the parlour," said the spider to the fly. "You were made free of it long ago, you know, and the other two ain't strangers. Stop till I shut the door of the shop. Ah, how it scracks! There ain't such a rusty bit of metal in this place as its own hinges, I believe. And I'm sure there's no such old bones here as mine. We're all suitable to our calling. We're well matched. Come into the parlour, come into the parlour." The parlour was the space behind the screen of rags. The old man raked the fire together with an old stair-rod, and having trimmed his smoking lamp, for it was night, with the stem of his pipe, he put it in his mouth again. While he did this, the woman who had already spoken threw her bundle on the floor, and sat down in a flaunting manner on a stool, crossing her elbows on her knees, and looking with a bold defiance at the other two. "What odds, then? What odds, Mrs. Dilber?" said the woman. "Every person has a right to take care of themselves. He always did." "That's true indeed," said the laundress. "No man more so." "Why then, don't stand as if you're afraid, woman. Who's the wiser? We're not going to pick holes in each other's coats, I suppose." "No, indeed," said Mrs. Dilber and the man together. "We should hope not." "Very well, then," cried the woman. "That's enough. Who's the worse for the loss of a few things like these? Not a dead man, I suppose." "No, indeed," said Mrs. Dilber, laughing. If he wanted to keep him after he was dead, a wicked old screw," pursued the woman, "why wasn't he natural in his lifetime? If he had been, he'd have somebody to look after him when he was struck with death, instead of lying gasping out his last there alone by himself." "It's the truest word that ever was spoke," said Mrs. Dilber. "It's a judgment on him." "I wish it was a heavier one," replied the woman. "And it should have been, you may depend upon it, if I could have laid my hands on anything else. Open that bundle, old Joe, and let me know of the value of it. Speak out plain. I'm not afraid to be the first, nor afraid for them seeing it. We knew pretty well that we were helping ourselves before we met here, I believe so. It's no sin. Open the bundle, Joe. But the gallantry of her friends would not allow of this, and the man in the faded black, mounting the breach first, produced his plunder. It was not extensive. A seal or two, a pencil case, a pair of sleeve buttons, and a brooch of no great value were all. They were severely examined and appraised by old Joe, who chalked the sums he was disposed to give for each upon the wall and added them up into a total when he found there was nothing more to come. "That's your account," said Joe, "and I wouldn't give another sixpence if I were to be boiled for not doing it. Who's next?" Mrs. Dilber was next. Sheets and towels, a little wearing apparel, 2 old-fashioned silver teaspoons, a pair of sugar tongs, and a few boots. Her account was stated on the wall in the same manner. "I always give too much to the ladies. It's a weakness of mine, and that's the way I ruin myself," said old Joe. "That's your account. If you asked me for another penny and made it an open question, I'd repent of being so liberal and knock off half a crown." "And now undo my bundle, Joe," said the first woman. Joe went down on his knees for the greater convenience of opening it, and having unfastened a great many knots, dragged out a large and heavy roll of some dark stuff. "What do you call this?" said Joe. "Bed curtains." "Ah!" returned the woman, laughing and leaning forward on her crossed arm. "Bed curtains!" "You don't mean to say you took 'em down, rings and all, with him lying there?" said Joe. "Yes, I do," replied the woman. "Why not?" "You were born to make your fortune," said Joe, "and you'll certainly do it." "I certainly shan't hold with my hand when I get anything in it by reaching it out, for the sake of such a man as he was." "I promised you, Joe," returned the woman coolly. "Don't drop that oil upon the blankets now." "His blankets?" asked Joe. "Whose else's do you think?" replied the woman. "He isn't likely to take cold without 'em, I dare say." "I hope he didn't die of anything catching, eh?" said old Joe, stopping in his work and looking up. "Don't you be afraid of that," returned the woman. "I ain't so fond of his company that I'd loiter about him for such things, if he did. You may look through that shirt till your eye aches, but you won't find a hole in it nor a threadbare place. It's the best he had, and a fine one, too. They'd have wasted it if it hadn't been for me." "What do you call wasting of it?" asked old Joe. And this woman gets really... "Putting it on him to be buried in, to be sure," replied the woman with a laugh. "Somebody was fool enough to do it, but I took it off again. If calico ain't good enough for such a purpose, it isn't good enough for anything. It's quite as becoming to the body. He can't look uglier than he did in that one." Scrooge listened to this dialogue in horror, as they sat grouped about their spoil, in the scanty light. Sorry, I was combining the two words. In the scanty light afforded by the old man's lamp, he viewed them with a detestation and disgust, which could hardly have been greater, though they have been obscene demons marketing the corpse itself. Laughed the same woman when old Joe produced a flannel bag with money in it, told out of their several gains upon the ground. "This is the end of it, you see. He frightened every one away from him when he was alive, to profit us when he was dead." "Spirit!" said Scrooge, shuddering from head to foot. I see. The case of this unhappy man might have been my own. My life tends that way now. Merciful heaven! What is this?" He recoiled in terror, for the scene had changed. Now he almost touched a bed, a bare, uncurtained bed, on which, beneath a ragged sheet, there lay something covered up, which, though it was dumb, announced itself in awful language. The room was very dark, too dark to be observed with any accuracy, though Scrooge glanced round it in obedience to a secret impulse, anxious to know what kind of room it was. A pale light, rising in the outer air, fell straight upon the bed, and on it, plundered and bereft, unwatched, unwept, uncared for, was the body of this man. Scrooge glanced toward the phantom. Its steady hand was pointed to the head. The cover was so carelessly adjusted that the slightest raising of it, the motion of a finger upon Scrooge's part, would have disclosed the face. He thought of it, felt how easy it would be to do, and longed to do it, but he had no more power to withdraw the veil than to dismiss the spectre at his side. O cold, cold, rigid, dreadful death, set up thine altar here, and dress it with such terrors as thou hast at thy command. For this is thy domain, but of the loved, revered, and honoured head thou canst not turn one hair to thy dread purposes, or make one feature odious. It is not that the hand is heavy and will fall down when released. It is not that the heart and pulse are still, but that the hand was open, generous, and true. The heart brave, warm, and tender, and the pulse a man's. Strike, shadow, strike, and see his good deeds springing from the wound, to sow the world with life immortal. No voice pronounced these words in Scrooge's ears, and yet he heard them when he looked upon the bed. He thought, if this man could be raised up now, what would be his foremost thoughts? Avarice, hard dealing, griping cares, they have brought him to a rich end, truly. He lay in the dark, empty house, with not a man, a woman, or a child, to say that he was kind to me in this or that, for the memory of one kind word, I will be kind to him. A cat was tearing at the door, and there was a sound of gnawing rats beneath the hearthstones. What they wanted in the room of death, and why they were so restless and disturbed, Scrooge did not dare to think. "Spirit," he said, "this is a fearful place. In leaving it, I shall not leave its lesson. Trust me. Let us go." Still the ghost pointed with an unmoved finger to the head. "I understand you," Scrooge returned, "and I would do it if I could, but I have not the power, Spirit. I have not the power." Again it seemed to look upon him. "If there is any person in town who feels emotion caused by this man's death," said Scrooge, quite agonized, "show that person to me, Spirit, I beseech you." And that's where we're going to leave off today. Like I said, I had already recorded that, so it was kind of funny. I stumbled over some of the same spots repeatedly, so that's interesting. I don't know what that says about my ability to read and speak English. So this chapter is about Christmas future. So I wanted to tell you about my future. So the last couple of years, I have adopted the Japanese tradition of Christmas cake. So in my future is my Christmas cake. So I'm going to tell you the outline of this story, of how this tradition came to be in Japan. So obviously, Christmas is not a Japanese holiday at all. The idea of Santa is still kind of like, it's a 50-50 family deal. I think at this point, though, most people accept the idea of it. He's kind of cute. He delivers presents. How cool is that? But there's no real established tradition. Christmas in itself is a date night here. Family night is New Year's Eve and New Year's. So the idea of Christmas cake and actually chicken is the huge thing for Christmas. And if you want to get it, you need to order it really, really soon because it sells out really fast. They start giving out booklets beginning of sometimes September, sometimes November, October. It's kind of like various depending on the store. I've seen it mostly in November, but basically what happened, how this became a tradition is that a long time ago, Western foreigners who celebrate Christmas were trying to kind of like make their own Christmas here, which is a little difficult when you don't really have, when there was nothing around that reflected Christmas. So, turkey, as you may recall from the previous chapter, is kind of the big food. And that's not really available here. Turkey is not native to Japan. Nor is goose. So basically what they ended up doing was they supplemented it with chicken, whether it was fried chicken or grilled chicken, who knows, long time ago. But chicken became part of the Christmas tradition. And cake, I assume, comes from some of the other European countries where, like France, where there's like the rolled cake. The king's cake, I think, is the the English, the British. I don't know if it's the whole UK. Don't quote me on this. I'm not a Christmas cake expert. So basically, I have here with me some of the magazines and stuff. So this is the one that was at the mall. Sorry, you guys get like the window reflection. I can't really fix that. It's the middle of the day. So you can see there's like a bunch of different cakes and like, appetizers and stuff. And like they have the cake stuff. Some of them have for your pets. How cute is that? This one is from one of the convenience stores. This is Family Mart. Family Mart is super famous for their chicken. So as you can see, they also have a lot of cakes and stuff. How and when you order the cake, it depends on the company. So chicken, big deal. I almost ordered from them, but I decided a different way to go about it. So good. So good. So some of the cakes you need to order before the end of November. And some of them, you can order them up to a week before Christmas. It just depends on whether it's by the company itself or if it's from one of their partner companies that they're hosting, basically. I ordered mine from my local grocery store. I've been ordering from them for a while, and I get a little bit of extra points, which is kind of like useless because I don't use them really. But I'll show you my cake and what I'm getting. Excuse me. So I ordered this chestnut cake here. Since coming to Japan, I've discovered a great love for the chestnut flavor. So most of the cakes here too, you might think it's buttercream, but it's not. They don't really use buttercream. They use whipped cream. So if you are a huge whipped cream cake fan, this country is totally for you. If you're like me and you like buttercream and stuff like that, it's not totally satisfying. But in this case, like the chestnut is a really thick paste kind of thing that they got going on. It's really good. And it complements it. So I also got one of the chicken sets. But they started doing this thing where they got like the German, I'm going to butcher this, Stollen? Yeah. Anyways, so they've been kind of expanding. Every year they have a little bit something different. So that's my Christmas future is cake and chicken. And I'm going to eat it all probably that night because I'm an adult. So tell me about what is something that you look forward to eat on Christmas? Are you going to do like a video call dinner with your family? Because we all need to stay safe this year. Although the vaccine has started to come out, it's still kind of in early stages. And we do still need to protect our family and friends. So what are you guys going to do for Christmas dinner? Or Christmas Eve dinner? When do you eat? My friend Jay and I have already talked about this, what his family does. But I'm curious about all of yours. And Jay, obviously, if you have more you want to tell me, tell me. But yeah, let me know, and I will see you guys later. Bye.